lakes and deserts and such and what. But here I am. And oh, even though it's later in the day, new coffee cup, the Toulouse coffee cup, a little stopover in that city during my sojourns. I've learned over the years, working abroad in it's some interesting but not necessarily pleasant places, that to schedule a little bit of time when I come out before I come back to the States to do a little decompressing. And in this case, it happened to involve the city of Toulouse, which is in the southwest of France. Nice place. Lots of buildings that have this sort of pinkish stucco type stuff to it. All right. How is everybody doing? I was able to check in on my emails, and some of us corresponded while I was gone. And then when I popped out of places where I don't go online, I took a look at Canvas, and it looks like everybody is progressing and things are moving apace. This week, we're going to continue our readings on quantitative research with a specific emphasis on causation, because that's really the whole point of quantitative research. What is causation, do you ask? Well, in quantitative research, and this is super, super critical in public relations, all right, there is a saying that applies to all quantitative research, and that is that correlation does not necessarily mean causation. Correlation, meaning two things happening at the same time, does not necessarily mean that this thing is causing this thing. And the classic example is if you look at ice cream sales in coastal Florida towns during the month of March, you see that they rise sharply. And if you look at shark encounters for coastal towns, Florida coastal towns during the month of March, you see that they rise sharply. So you might ask, you might wonder, what is it about people who eat ice cream and then go into the water that makes them particularly attractive to sharks? And the answer is nothing. Because just because there's a correlation that as ice cream sales go up and shark encounters go up, doesn't mean that there's any causation to people eating ice cream and more frequently encountering sharks. It doesn't mean that they're tastier to sharks, they're more interesting to sharks. No. What does it mean? It means that in March, in coastal towns in Florida, the number of people there goes up because it's spring break and the spring breakers come piling in. Spring breakers go to the beach. People on the beach get hot. People who are hot buy ice cream. And people that get warm because they're on the beach and get hot, they go into the water, which is where the sharks are. Okay, so that's correlation. Ice cream sales, shark encounters, but it is not causation. Eating ice cream and having a shark being interested in you. So when you work in public relations, it's easy to fall into the misstep, the trap of mistaking correlation for causation. Well, sales are going up, this must be effective. Okay, so in quantitative research, in fact, the real purpose is to establish causation. That's what you're going to be reading about this week. Now, if you're seeing this video today, I have yet to post the questions. I'll post the questions tomorrow. Just coming back, getting back. I mean, I literally got back this weekend, and sorting through all the emails and the regular mail and everything else. It's super, super busy this front end of the week. So I have the module posted in terms of the readings, okay, but I'll put up the discussion questions tomorrow. However, quick note for you for this week and forward. This is week 14, which means we have this next and the concluding week left in the semester. That is 3 short weeks. Next week, week 15, no discussion questions. Next week, final week, week 16, no discussion questions. This is the last week for your discussion questions. Now, I did grade, as you see, discussion weeks 1 through 8 during modular ACRE spring break. I'm going to be beginning the same as well for the remaining discussion sections from 9 through 14. If you have not completed the discussions, get on it. I will allow your submission late without penalty. Okay, let's say through week 15. That is April 28th. But after that, I'm closing the discussions, and I gotta start grading. The amount of grading that just piles up at the end of the semester, especially spring semester, is substantial for us here at Regent. And what I mean by especially spring semester, because everybody's graduating, and those people that are like, just squeaking in under the wire, they got to have all their stuff in, all their grades, their scores for the registrar's office to make the determinations to whether graduation goes ahead or not. Okay, so it means a lot of work with a fairly busy schedule. So I have to get a running start at it. Okay, so if you are missing discussion questions, and these are easy points, folks. Don't leave them laying on the table. Pick them up. Get them done. You have till the 28th of April, which is about 2 weeks from now. Okay. Also, your third presentation, keep that in mind, is due in that last week. And your final examination will be in that last week. I don't know that I've picked a date yet for the final examination. I'll take a look at everything else that needs to be done, and I will announce it coming soon. But safe to say, since Saturday, May the 3rd, is the end of the semester, it will be due before that Saturday. Now, here's how the final exam is going to work. It goes up on Canvas. I'll give you 24 hours to do it. I'll give you plenty of notice. Okay. But when you sign in, you got to do it in one sitting. You don't get multiple attempts. And if you log out, that's it. It's like walking into a classroom, and then you get the exam passed to you, and you don't go, oh, yeah, I got to go to work, so I'll come back and finish this later in a couple. No. Okay. So you're going to block out that time. You are going to block out that time. Sit down, take the exam, get it done, get it in. I'll work very hard as to have it not compete, by way of deadline with your final presentation. It is worth almost a quarter of your grade, 22%. Okay. 220 questions. It'll be a combination of true, false, multiple choice, and then short answer, a couple of sentences that you'll fill in on the exam. It will be taken, as I've said many, many times, from the discussion questions. So if you go back, you review the discussion questions and you review answers, especially if you had some uncertainty about the answer, refer to the videos that I've made in which I give you the answers. Okay. So that's what we're going to be doing for this week. Okay. For this video, and then one subsequent video in the week, I will be reviewing the discussion questions since they're going to be on your exam. All right. And we'll go back to the latest before we get to the one that we just did. So let's take a look at the questions from week 12, see what you had to say, and we'll add what we feel, will help you. And this will give you a good footing for your final exam. Question number 1, week 12. Consider the 6 limitations of quantitative research listed in the article that you read. Of these, I gave you some stuff to read. Which one of the 6 do you believe has the potential to most negatively impact good, informative PR research and planning? Briefly explain your selection. Okay. So remember, if you choose to go into PR, you have to know what it is that's going to limit the ability of your research to give an accurate picture. Now, one of the questions we're going to get to, question 4, I gave you a piece that I wrote, and I have a phrase in there that's often used in research, not just quantitative research, which is garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't have good stuff coming in, the stuff that you're going to get out by way of numbers, you could put any kind of numbers you want into a calculation, and it'll spit something out the other side. It doesn't mean that it's accurate or is in any way relevant. So on the front end of your research, you have to be aware of what the limitations are, and most significantly, are they impacting your research? Okay, Claire, let's see what you said. The author lists limited contextual understanding, restricted complexity, limited flexibility, high costs. That's actually a real significant one because a lot of companies don't want to pay. All right. Analytical rigidity, data dredging, as the six shortcomings of quantitative research. Limited contextual understanding seems like it could really damage PR research and planning. It seems like many failed PR campaigns could be traced back to this primary issue. I'm thinking about the Bud Light here. A good campaign requires rich understanding of data. So poorly interpreted data is worse than no data at all. And I, Claire, actually, I believe this would be a true statement. Here's why. Our brains are hardwired to find answers. You need to be aware of this in the operation. Excuse me. I brought back, along with a cool coffee cup, I brought back a cold from my trip. But you need to be aware of this, and all of us do, for how your brain works. Your brain is hardwired to insert explanation as the requisite for understanding. The brain does not function well when it has a problem that it can't solve, and we will create an explanation to insert in there as the stand-in for understanding, including if you spend much time. I know some of you teach undergraduates and you spend much time around kids. One of the standard explanations, here's the problem. I'm not getting the material in the course. This is the student, not me saying this. Okay. I don't understand. Okay. Well, what's the explanation? Well, the explanation could be you're not applying yourself to the level that you need because everybody's different. So you might have to spend, there's much more time studying as opposed to other people. Okay. That could be an explanation. Two, this is a field that you just don't have an aptitude for. I'm not a concert pianist. Never will be. You know why? I can't play the piano. I don't have an aptitude for it. Okay, so that could be the second reason. Okay. But frequently inserted by the person who's encountering this problem is the instructor's dumb. They don't know how to explain anything. The textbook is written in a way that nobody can possibly understand. The work is being presented too fast and there's too much, and on and on and on. You see, rather than the actual causal explanation for the phenomenon, that is, you're not applying yourself, or this is just an area you don't have an aptitude to, the observer, the person with the problem, in this case, the student, inserts these explanations. When you have faulty data, okay, you tend to look at it and go, oh, okay, well, here's an answer. I'm going to conclude X. When you have no data, then you go, I'm not sure what's causing this. All right. And so, yes, in many instances, bad data is worse than no data at all, because no data at all will typically prompt the mind to go find some sort of data will prompt the mind to interpret that in a way that provides explanation. And often, and this is what we have to be cautious of in our own thinking, and then how we apply our skills to our works, it will often, some sort of data will be applied in conformity with one's own bias, called bias confirmation. And you mentioned Bud Light. Okay. And that is a good example, Claire, because in the case of Bud Light, the person who designed the campaign, she had a bias. And a bias is that, well, we're all progressing now and everything is fluid and men are women and women are men and we're all accepting this. This was her bias, which was not true where the demographic of Budweiser beer drinkers were concerned. I mean, I don't think it's true for the general demographic, but we're, talking about selling beer here. And she turned this loose and it was an absolute catastrophe. All right. Okay, good answer. Question number 2. Consider the research you have done concerning backcountry.com and your PR plan for the company's rehabilitation. Formulate a null hypothesis for a proposed action that might be taken as part of the PR plan. Okay, so here is the design of this question. The purpose of this question is to get you to understand, A, how do you formulate a hypothesis, and B, to familiarize yourself with some of the jargon around hypotheses, null hypotheses. Okay, so if definitions about what a hypothesis is or the listing of the jargon concerning hypotheses might pop up somewhere else, like a test, oh, wink, you'll be prepared for it. Okay, let's see how you did. Valerie, let's take a look at you. Null hypothesis. Launching a comprehensive public relations effort centered on brand transparency and community participation will have no meaningful impact on customer confidence at Backcountry. Okay. To test the null hypothesis, give a pre-test, post-test, excuse me. You wrote this fine. My mouth just isn't functioning. Give a pre-test, post-test quantitative survey to a sample of Backcountry's target consumers. The poll would assess consumer trust level before the PR campaign began, and again after the PR campaign had run for a certain amount of time, 3 months or whatever you determine it is. Okay. Likert scale questions on branding integrity, customer happiness, community involvement may be included in a survey. Okay, good point. Make sure, folks, that things like Likert scale. Likert scales are used to measure emotional subtlety. All right, and the scale itself was invented by a guy named Likert, and so that's what that's why it's named that way. So I mean, a lot of the stuff in quantitative research, you see this jargon. This is confusing. Look, it's not confusing. Okay, I mean, this is the word for this is cup, C-U-P. That's very random. Okay, why is this now splashing all over me? Why is this cup and this is fish? Okay, what is it about CUP that's more representative of this physical object than that? Nothing. Okay, I'm going to get on my shirt. All right, so you just memorize this stuff. Don't sweat it. Don't let it throw you. Okay. Okay, so Likert scale, it's always an odd set of numbers, 1 through 5, 1 through 7, 1 through 9. 1 through 5, I have found as a researcher, is sufficient. And it goes, starting from number 1 is strongly disagree. So you say, please react to the following statement. Okay, and then you put the statement on there. I trust Backcountry. Backcountry.com is a trustworthy company. Backcountry.com does good in the community. And then number 1 is strongly disagree. Number 2 is disagree. Number 3 is, I don't know, got no opinion. Number 4 is agree. Number 5, strongly agree. Because this gives people the opportunity to express their emotions on a spectrum, which is representative of how emotions are encountered. And the null hypothesis is a statement of no effect or no difference, hence null. Okay, so excellent answer, Valerie, saying that there's no meaningful impact. Now, what you're trying to do is either confirm or deny, approve or disprove the null hypothesis, meaning, yes, there is. It seems a little convoluted. You go, yes, there is no effect. It's like, yes, we have no bananas. Yes, there is no meaningful impact on customer confidence after the PR campaign, or no, there is a meaningful impact on customer confidence. And by the way, please note that in disproving the null hypothesis, that doesn't mean that it's a good impression for the company. So you have, this is a good example, by the way, Valerie. You put this null hypothesis forward saying, we're going to run a PR campaign. There'll be no effect. Okay, so remember the association in your mind. Null means nothing will happen. Okay, so let's say you put the PR campaign forward. Okay, and let's say the effect is negative by way of public impression. Like, these guys just, they bite wax. They're a terrible company, and now they're trying to make themselves look good, and they're trying to schmooze the public and cover up the fact that they shut down all these little industries. They just gives people the ick. And the impression of backcountry.com in the public actually trends towards the negative. Okay, that would disprove the null hypothesis, but it doesn't mean it's a good thing for backcountry. Remember, in constructing and proposing a hypothesis, your job is not to support it in a positive way. Your job is just to ask the question and then answer it. And however it's answered, in fact, yes, the null hypothesis is confirmed because there was no effect on public opinion concerning backcountry after the PR campaign, or there was an effect on public opinion concerning backcountry as the PR campaign. Whichever those two shake out, that's the only job you have as a researcher, is to find out what the answer to the question is. Okay, and you could use a Likert scale that is have people express their emotions to, first of all, you want to ask them, did you see the PR campaign, and then ask them how they felt. Okay, good answer, Valerie. All right, question numero 3. Consider the 6 strengths of quantitative research listed in the article that you read. Of these, which one of the 6 do you believe has the potential to most positively impact good PR research? Okay, Hillary, let's just take you this time. Lim lists generability, hypothesis testing, causality, standardization, scalability, speed, objectivity, and reproducibility, the top strength of quantitative research. I believe that generalization has the most potential to positively impact effective PR research, because researchers can apply their results to larger populations. Okay, that's a good answer. You could have also have said causality, because it gives you a clear picture of when this happens, but generalization is absolutely key in PR research, because when you're researching a question, okay, and this is true in politics or in selling beer or whatever, what you're after ultimately is not simply what the group you're talking to thinks, but is it what this group thinks representative of everybody? Because you do not have the time, the money, or even the resources to talk to everybody. You can't do it. And lucky for you, you don't have to. Okay? You want to find out if your findings from talking to these somebodies can be generalized to everybody's. Okay? And if the answer is yes, then you've done your job well. Okay? So good job, Hillary. Okay. Question number 3. Consider this. I'm sorry, I just said that. Question number 3. Question number 4, which was a bonus question. So, I think I don't know, 2 or 3 of these throughout the semester, in case you missed some from discussions 1 through 8, give you a chance to make up some points. Okay. I gave you a piece that I wrote on children and vaccines. And I believe that I told you in the video that I posted for that. Look, I don't give you the stuff that I write because, I insist that you read it my way. Okay. I give you the stuff that I write because I am applying the very techniques that we're talking about here to my work that then goes out to a very broad audience. This piece in particular was seen by about 1 million people. Not bad. All right. And I did a couple of media appearances with it and talked about some of these quantitative issues. The piece was not intended, and I hope, I made it clear in writing the piece was not intended to have parents run the other direction when it comes to vaccination. Okay. but rather to inform people about, the picture that you're getting may not be the full picture because there are some methodological problems that are baked into the system. Now, do I in any way suggest, or do I even think that they're baked into the system this way on purpose to skew the numbers? No. I think in some ways, especially with the VAERS system that reports vaccine injuries, methodologically, they're trying to do the best they can. And when you start talking about research and research results and information that's released concerning research results about products, in those instances, it's quite clear that there's some tomfoolery, that they're baking in nonsense and then turning it loose to the public. And I don't just mean vaccines. You get this with a lot of products. And I go, yeah, okay. Somebody's playing hard and fast with the numbers, okay, on purpose. You should be, as a general rule, suspicious of research that is done by the industry, looking at the products promoted by the industry. So if you're in a company and you're doing PR and they want you to use, in-house research, I mean, if they tell you this is how it's going to be, then ugh. But somewhere in the back of your head, you go, this is not the most trustworthy results because it's conflict of interest. So when the tobacco companies paid for tobacco research, they're said automatically a conflict of interest. Okay. So there are in some instances in which there are issues baked into the methodology that are clearly there to skew the results. I don't think that that's going on in most of the stuff that I looked at here. It's rather that people are not paying attention to and or are not aware of some of the methodological problems that skew the results. Okay. Anyway, in the piece on children vaccine, I highlight some of the quantitative research shortcomings with how the numbers for vaccine harms versus vaccine benefits are reported. If of these shortcomings, which one do you believe has the potential to negatively affect the public's ability to make informed decisions about whether or not to receive a particular vaccine? Okay. Let's see. Who did we not look at yet? Alicia. Okay. Gardner 2025 highlights research shortcomings with how data on vaccines harm the vaccine benefits are reported. According to the article, data suggesting disease prevention from vaccines is more vigorously collected than data on vaccine injuries. That's true. All right. Now, understand when I use the phrase more vigorously, I wasn't saying more accurately. It's just, the vacuum of pulling that data up is a lot stronger than the funnel system, the siphon system for pulling up data on vaccine problems. Doesn't mean it's good data, just numbers. Okay. Additionally, the voluntary nature of virus reporting makes it difficult to link side effects to vaccines and creates a backlog in processing reported events. This combined contributes to an underestimate of potential vaccine harms, which is true. Okay. That creates an inflated sense of vaccine efficacy. The example Gardner provided was a 10-year-old boy highlights how lack of a follow-up can lead to cases being viewed as successes, even if the disease was still contracted, which is also true. While the everyone's included approach to calculating harm versus effects is flawed, it negatively impacts informed decision-making of the public. Without accurate and comprehensive data on potential harms compared to successes, individuals cannot truly make informed decisions for themselves, especially when confronted with the pressure to fall in line with global public safety standards that could protect the population. Okay, good answer. So yeah, you could have picked any one of these. The lopsided nature of how the data is collected. Okay, the media's tendency to report numbers as block numbers, especially numbers that are going to scare you, that are going to emotionally disrupt you, because that. And look, I work in the media, so I'm not saying burn it down, but look. Even if you ride an animal back and forth to work, which is how I make my living, is in the media. I mean, if the thing's got a weird particular aspect to it, then say so. Okay, don't say that you're riding a horse when you're riding a hippo. You know what I'm saying? And the media is designed, 2025, media is designed to put the viewer in a state of emotional disturbance because we pay attention to things that frighten us because we don't want to get hurt by them. So, you see a snake, we don't go, oh, we cover our eyes. We're looking at it very intently. It's like, whoa, what is that? Okay. So the media tends to release big block numbers. There's no stratification. There's no or little a granular analysis saying, well, this is the total death number. When you break it down by category as to who's actually dying from what. Because when you engage the intellect and you pull back the emotion, you're a lot less frightened and disrupted, which is not good for media business models. The more disrupted and frightened and unsettled you are, the longer you stare at the page. And the longer you stare at the page, the more ka-ching they make from the ads that are popping up all over the page. Again, this is not, some sort of a self-righteous rant. This is just the nature of the beast. Okay, so that's a problem too. So you could have picked, any one of those and said, this is what's going on. All right, one more for this, Claire, because this was a long read. I hope that you got something out of it, or maybe you enjoyed it or not. I don't know. One of the concepts I like to teach in my advanced persuasion class is the extended parallel process model, or EPPM, is a framework for using fear appeal approximately. Exactly what I'm talking about here. Basically, I work for a Christian university. We look at EPPM from a Christian perspective and tie it back to evangelism. EPPM teaches persuasive communicators to consider 4 key elements when crafting a fear appeal. Those are audience perception of threat severity, audience perception of their own susceptibility to the threat, audience perception of proposed response efficacy, and audience perception of self-efficacy in carrying out the struggle, the suggested action. In light of this, I read your article. I was really bothered by the intentional lack of data stratification. This created a much higher severity and susceptibility message, one that was believable due to the abundance of legitimate power backing it. In my opinion, this took away the ability to freely choose because the general public did not actually know all of the facts. Now audiences believe they're much more susceptible to a much more severe threat than they really really are. This means that the response efficacy of getting a vaccine seems much more reasonable. And of course, many people found it much easier to face a needle than death or the chance of putting a loved one in danger. Okay, again, and that was the other, major methodological problem I pointed out. So I wanted to read that answer. Good answer, Hillary. Just on that topic, and I'm just talking about myself. All right, you can do you. All right, but as a data-driven thinker, first of all, I knew that COVID, as a respiratory virus related to SARS, was not a new thing. Okay, now how quickly it spread, okay, and that's called gain of function. Its gain of function was much faster than most viruses of this type, that is coronavirus. And the name, by the way, comes from, if viruses are so small, you cannot see them with a microscope. And the reason for that is, I'm trying to find something here that'll help me make the point. Okay, here we go. This will work. Okay, this and watch this. Okay, let's say that this chewed piece of gum. Okay, hey, any port in a storm. Let's say this is a virus. Okay, the only way that your eye sees anything is if you bounce a proton of light off of that thing, and then the proton of light goes into your eye. Okay, so let's say that this coin, let's say that this is a bacteria, and this penny is a proton of light. So the light comes shining down. When I say bounce off, you turn on the light or you just put it in the sun. The light comes shining down and bake hits the bacteria and bounces back up and then goes up through the magnifiers, or if you're just looking at stuff on the ground, into your eye and hits the sensors at the back and creates a signal to your brain. And you go, oh, hey, coin. If you're looking under a microscope, bacteria. But what happens if the thing that you want to see is smaller than what's going to bounce off of it? Okay. So this would not bounce. This won't bounce off of this because this is too small. So it's kind of when you have a virus and you have a proton of light, which is a particle, it's like trying to bounce a bowling ball off of a grape. Not going to happen. You could have a grape and you can roll the bowling ball at it, but the bowling ball is not going to bounce off of it. In fact, the bowling ball is going to smash the grape. And sunlight is a well-known disinfectant. Sunlight kills viruses because the protons are so much bigger and they literally smash right through the virus. So how do you see a virus? Well, you have to get something smaller than the virus to bounce off the virus. And then you can register. So let's pretend like this coin is the virus. Okay. So this would be a proton. This is way too big. It's going to smash it. But what if, and we'll use this penny again, we don't use a proton. We use an electron. Bing. And we bounce it off because electron is much smaller than a proton. We bounce it off the virus and it goes up into the microscope. You can't see electrons with the naked eye, but they can hit an electronic sensor and then create an image. Like most cameras that don't have film have an electronic sensor at the back, and then the light comes in and it's registered by the electronic sensor, which then interprets it and creates a picture like the camera on your phone. There's no film in here, right? It's an electronic sensor. Coronaviruses get their name because when you look at them under electron microscopes, they're really dark in the center, and around the edge they have this flamey outer edge, like looking at the corona of a full eclipse of the sun. If you've ever seen a picture of a full eclipse, I think we had one a little while ago. When the sun finally goes through the moon's shadow and you get this big flaming thing around, that's the coronavirus. Okay. So anyway, as a data-driven person, I know coronaviruses, they're not new. They've been around for a long time. In this case, COVID, coronavirus 19 for 2019, had a higher gain of function rate, which lends credence to it had been altered in a lab. It was not created out of thin air in a lab. Okay. It may have been altered. Its gain of function accelerated in a lab. Okay. So now again, remember, everything I'm telling you here is just what I did for me doing me. Okay. So knowing what coronaviruses are, knowing what this thing is, knowing myself in terms of my general health, I do a physical every year and I watch out for my health. I didn't get a vaccine. Not once. Why? I didn't need it. All right. Because I was not in any of the categories, even though when the coronavirus first came around, I'm in my 60s now. When it came around, I was in my late 50s. Even because of that, I knew, because of data from previous coronaviruses, that I was not at risk of any severe outcome. And when I did, in fact, get COVID, because when viruses go around, they go around to the whole population. But the first go around with COVID, I've had ingrown toenails that gave me more of a problem than I developed from getting the virus, because I knew I didn't have the susceptibility to severe outcome driven by comorbidity. Okay. So again, and as I point out in the article, I hope you got, the impression this was not to criticize those that had comorbidities. Most comorbidities, and we're talking about substantial double digits in terms of percentage, like 70, 80. Okay. are behavioral driven conditions. All right. Too much smoking, too much drinking, too much eating, not enough movement. These behaviors lead to susceptibility and development of comorbidities. I mean, as we approach Easter, we just had Palm Sunday. We're all going to die in terms of passing from this physical material plane. That's a given. Okay. Now, of course, the good news is that death is only it's only the stepping through a door from a material reality to a realm to a spiritual realm. It's not in itself into nothingness, but that transition is going to happen. Okay. So not having a comorbidity doesn't make you immortal. It just gives you the capacity to make more use of the time that you have, because if your time is consumed with dealing with conditions and the resulting necessity to address them that are driven by behavior. I mean, look, there's like only 24 hours in a daily cycle. You only get so much time to do so much stuff. Okay. So knowing that I knew I didn't have any of these comorbidities, I didn't have any susceptibility to these comorbidities, it made no sense for me to have something injected into my system. I don't get a flu shot every year. Same reason. Don't need it. Doesn't solve a problem that I have. This is data driven. This is not politically driven. This is not, yeah, you're all out of shape and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not. This is data driven. And in the same way, I run my system and my health data, knowing if I do X amount of this, like if I spend X amount of time lifting weights and resistance training and cardio and taking this many calories and then the likelihood of the following results coming out from that data going in goes like this, up and down. Okay. All right. So this was not an indictment of those that have chronic conditions, but rather it was a pointing out of the methodologies that lead to skewed picture and why they're there, and what you as an individual need to know about it, and especially if you end up in the field of public relations or research. All right. That's it for today. Long video, but coming back, lots to get to. Okay, everybody. I will have a review of week 13 later on in this week. I'll post questions tomorrow. I'm back. I'm doing office hours. In fact, I'm in for, even hours that I'm not in. So if you've been emailing with me saying, hey, I really got some questions, please call me up. I'm here. I'm here to help you. I'm invested in your success. All right. Okay, everybody. Home stretch. Hang tough. You got this. All right. Good to be back. Good to see you. I thought about you. I prayed about you a lot while I was gone. And for the remainder of the semester, I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.